Okay, now let's try Facebook. Looks like it's working. All right, I think we're going live. We'll see. All right, I think we're good. Okay. So good evening, everyone. Good evening. I'm so excited about my guest this evening. I have Mira Cassidy here. She has an amazing, powerful story. And everyone, wait, I hear feedback. My guest this evening.
Just feedback, a little feedback.
Okay. I don't know why it does that, but we're going to start all over again because that, okay.
All right, no problem.
Okay. I don't know why I'm telling you Facebook. But anyway, good evening, everyone. I have Mira Cassidy here, and she's going to share her story. She definitely has a powerful story, and she's obviously very creative as well. So I'm just going to her tell it. But I am Pastor Carolyn, your pastor and purpose pusher of Tears to Breakthrough Ministries and Conference. And we like to be authentic with our stories and share our stories because we understand that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so when we share our testimony, then we not only help ourselves to heal, but we also help somebody else to heal. So I'm all about being authentic with our stories. And so, yes, so Mira, I know you're an author and your book, so I don't know if you wrote the book first or did the monologue or the monologue and did the book, but either way, I did see that monologue. It was so powerful. So
I appreciate that.
So powerful.
I appreciate that. It came from the book. So the monologue is kind of how the book starts off. The first portion of the book. So the book definitely came first. And then after I, was complete and finished the book, I thought I felt like I needed to do something more with it. And that's why I went on ahead and did the monologue. So yeah, I appreciate that.
So just whatever you want to share about your story. When I spoke to you, we kind of sort of have some similarities in some of our life experiences and trauma.
Right.
But they kind of already know my story.
Okay.
So whatever it is you want to share, just feel free to share. I'm just going to let you the floor to share.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to try to not go over here and over there and things like that.
Okay.
So I try to take some notes and try to kind of keep in mind kind of what I want to say. I can kind of be kind of long-winded sometimes and so forth. So I'll get right on into it. So I definitely want to thank you, Carolyn, for allowing me to come up on your platform and to tell my story. I'm really open with whomever is interested in hearing about my journey, because like you said, that's how we learn, that's how we heal, that's how we move forward. And then hearing someone else's journey gives us so much power and encouragement to continue to endure. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak on your platform. And whenever I'm doing public speaking, which, wow, with the pandemic, I really haven't done a whole lot. So I'm excited to be back and doing, what I love to do, or one of the things that I love to do. Of course, I love to write, and I'm an author. And I have currently 3 books on Amazon. So let me go ahead and make sure I get that in.
Yes, definitely.
So of course, the book that you were talking about, Let Me Tell It, available on Amazon. Book 2 is Bounce Back from Tragedy, which gets more into my love for writing for fiction. And then also a journal, a healing journal, Breaking Toxic Cycles. So it's like a 30-day journal, and I love it. I'm actually going to change the cover on that to make it just more friendlier to a wider audience. But definitely it takes you through 30 days of thinking through ways you want to clear out, toxic elements of your life. And then it has affirmations that you go through each day to kind of help you through that process. So it's one that I go through myself, and I think about, and I refresh, myself every month, and something that I want to share and put out there as well.
I love that title, because toxic traumas, we don't always realize that we do need a detox. Like, I know a lot of people do detox with their physical body, but we don't always get that we need to actually do a soul detox.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Detox,
because all that causes stress on our bodies.
It does.
And there's a book that I heard about that I want to get. It's called The Body Keeps Score. Your body knows everything that you've been through. So not just the physical, all the emotional stuff, is you don't want that just collecting in your body and putting those toxins in your body. Just like anything else, you got to get that out, and you have to do it in a healthy way. So I'm very, very big about that. So definitely thank you on that. I also like to thank, when I speak, I want to make sure that I do 2 things before I really start and get into my story. That's thank everyone. Thank the host, and then thank people who have been there for me in my support system. Thank you to people who have called and checked up on me. There's so many people. Thank my mom. I want to thank my mom, even though, definitely this journey does involve my parents. Even though sometimes what I have to share may come off negative, it's the fact that my mom, always makes it known that, she loved me. And that's so important. And the fact that she, although she has not read my book and doesn't have an interest in it, the fact that she has not said a negative thing to me about my book. And that helps also in the journey, in the journey of healing as well. So I definitely appreciate my mom for that, and everyone else who's been a source of encouragement. And when I speak, I never speak to offend. I just speak to share my journey and to say, this is what I've been through. There are other people who are in the faith that I used to belong to, that I used to actively practice, that are going to be surprised and shocked if they hear me say the things that I'm going to share today. They probably wouldn't believe it. Some people can relate. So I never speak to be offensive. I'm telling my journey, and unfortunately my journey is very controversial, and it's going to have some things that's going to make people feel uncomfortable, but it's my journey. It's what I went through.
Your story is your story, and only you can tell it.
That's right. And who else to tell it but the person who's been through it firsthand? So another thing I wanted to mention was too, also when I speak, and a lot of times I want to make sure people know this is not what happens in every religion. This is not what happens in every faith. This is what happens to me. There's a lot of wonderful pastors and churches and religious worship communities out there that support women of violence, support women of trauma. With my journey, I didn't find that support within the faith that I belong to, which is why I no longer practice it. It came to the point where it's like, now it's a safety issue. This is a safety issue. So I need to walk away from this. So I get more into my story. Let me tell you why I wrote Let Me Tell It. I'll start there. I had to decide tonight, where do I want to start? Because I feel like I have so much information and so much I want to share. I had to pick where I wanted to start. So I just wanted to go ahead and start with why I wrote Let Me Tell It. I wrote Let Me Tell It because at that point, I didn't know what else to do. I had filed for divorce from my abusive husband, and we were cohabitating together. And because he wasn't going to leave. He refused to leave the house. So we were cohabitating together. So my anxiety level was completely through the roof. to the point where literally my hands were physically shaking. It's not just about feeling the anxiety, but literally my hands shaking from just dealing with him every night and not knowing if something else is going to pop off or not, and sleeping in the same bed with him, still, each night, he on one side, I'm on the other, so going through that, I had to have a way to cope. So one day I just literally pulled out a piece of paper and started to write. And let me tell it, was the rough draft was finished in about 2 months. And writing is something I've always done. I've journaled when I was young and just always have had that love for journaling and writing. It's just amazing how something, it's just amazing.
Therapeutic. It's therapeutic.
It is very therapeutic. It's very therapeutic way to get your thoughts and to process. Very healthy to process. And it's just amazing how something that I love to do and I've done for so long actually ended up being something that I have a passion for, something I'm going to continue to pursue and perfect this craft. So it's from trauma, something beautiful came out of it. Now, when I first wrote the book, I thought I'm never going to share this information with anybody because it's too controversial. But after some time, I went back and read my book and I thought, this is too good for me to keep quiet. I'm going to share this information. And when I was going through the editing process, I was, getting, having consults and was even, asked, is this something that you want to do? Because these people may come after you. I was warned about that. And I said, you know what, the way I feel about it, anyone who's really my brother and who's really my sister won't have a problem with me. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to share my story. I'm going to do it. And that's the way I've always felt about it. Anybody who's I've had, of course, there's been negative comments or things like that, or things that have not been said directly to me, but have came back to me or whatever. But overall, I've had more of a positive experience than a negative experience. That's definitely a beautiful thing. And it's amazing how many people have told me from the faith that I used to actively practice that, either that was their story or that, they're proud of me, or that they, they appreciate and admire my courage. So I definitely appreciate all that support. And I'll get more into kind of why I decided to walk away from that faith a little later on and explain more specifically what I mean when I say it became a safety issue. So one thing about domestic violence with the faith that I belong to, let me say that, I definitely have a past. I have a past, and not a pretty past. Within the faith that I grew up in, I was known as kind of being, specifically being rebellious, a sexually active youth. So it was something that within the faith that I grew up in, the way that was handled was you had to be counseled about that destructive pattern. So I found myself in a situation, they're called judicial committees. I found myself in a situation as a teenager from the age of 15 on up into 17, when I was excommunicated, I was called disfellowshipped, being in committee cases. They're called committee cases. So a committee case is when basically they're called elders, 3 elders sit down with you privately and ask you specific questions about your sin. And then after that, you're asked to go out of the room and they discuss it amongst themselves. And then you're invited back in and they make a decision as far as any punishment or any type of counsel. Well, they counsel you as well, and of course, give encouragement, but then there's also going to be some type of, discipline for the act. So for me, I was honest, I'm 15 years old and I told my parents, which is kind of where the monologue starts, to some detail, kind of as a flashback in that, because I'm pregnant at the beginning of the book. And it's a flashback to when I told my parents, I was sexually active, and how that was just a complete, shock for them, and then their reaction. And I really think that when you look at kind of my journey, that day, the relationship with my father has never been the same. It's never been the same, unfortunately. I love my dad, but we don't talk now. We don't communicate. And our relationship that's just the way it's going to be. But I definitely truly believe that moment, something just changed for him. That's just never really healed for him. And then of course, with him, he was a leader, right? He's an elder. So now my daughter my only daughter. I'm the only girl out of 3 boys. There's four siblings. So I'm the only girl out of 3 boys. My boys didn't give me this trouble. My girl did. And then the only girl out of all, we call them the cousins, all of my grandmother's grandchildren, I'm the only girl. So this is like a really big deal for my family that I've lost my virginity. Is a big problem,
right.
Which a lot of people who grew up in similar, religions and things like that is a very, very big deal. And of course, it's, a sin in the Bible as well. I try to be delicate because I want my information to be welcoming to people of all different faiths. Okay, and some people don't believe that, but I definitely do believe that you should keep your virginity until marriage. So, I try to be friendly to everyone.
Let me ask you one thing,
people,
before you go any further. When you say faith, are you talking about a denomination or are you just talking about your faith?
Okay. I say faith to kind of, it's talking about the specific denomination of religion that I was raised in. Okay. I always want to, because this religion is known worldwide, there's 8 million people worldwide. They're in over 200 lands. Known for just being very active in the community on a daily basis. Within the religion, one thing that they're very proud of is that 24/7, someone's learning about the word of God through this faith. So I'm very careful not to, kind of mention, if somebody asks me on the side.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But then to the interesting part,
I just wanted to distinguish faith versus denomination, because
and I appreciate
that denominations. Okay,
right. Now I appreciate that. I should have did that too. I appreciate that.
That's okay.
and the interesting thing about it is, although I don't practice this faith anymore, my children still do. Okay. So as a mom, I encourage my children to still walk in that faith for this simple reason. Okay. Their journey is different than mine. And I talk to them all the time. Look at, not to say that I'm wicked and all this other stuff, but, I try to explain to them, your journey is different than mine. Hopefully you will never experience the things that I have experienced. But I truly believe that if you are able to keep yourself in line with the biblical teachings that you've learned, you'll be fine. Now, I had some things that played into me acting out as a teenager. And sadly, sometimes I'm still dealing with that. As I'm healing, some days, I'm okay. Some days I'm not. Believe it or not, today has been a very vulnerable day for me. Okay. Just life. Sometimes you wake up and you just have, disturbing thoughts sometimes and things that kind of frustrate you, because I'm going and I'm healing. And healing is a process that you can't rush.
It's a lifelong process.
It's a lifelong process.
It really is a lifelong process, especially after you've gone through any type of trauma. Sometimes people think they can rush. No, it really is a lifelong process, and you have to work at it every day.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because that's a very big problem that I have with my family and with well-meaning friends. They want you to just get over it. Just get over it. Yeah. And I'm going to give you a perfect example of that. I'm going to kind of take a little detour and try to come back on topic. That's okay. One of the things I want to give you a foundation. So the individual who I married was the same individual who I've always been involved with ever since I was 15 years old. We ended up getting married. Now, we had 2 kids out of wedlock. Now, as I was saying before, as a teenager from the age of 15 to 17, I kept getting in trouble for dating him and being active with him, right? I kept getting in trouble. And for the most part, I was very honest about it. My conscience would bother me. I would tell on myself, and that meant that I had to go before the men of the congregation, these 3 men of the congregation, and have a judicial committee. And some of the questions were very, very personal to go through. And that's something that I kind of deal with, because I felt like looking back as an adult, talking to 3 men.
3 men, yeah.
I think to myself, and this is the point, within all these judicial committees that I had, because it was 4 before this fellowship at 17, I was 17 and pregnant in this fellowship. When I was this fellowship, that means that no one in your faith can communicate with you, not even your parents. And which was a very difficult thing to go through, because I was a minor and I still lived at home. Right. So the teachings of the faith taught them to have a least bit of contact with me as possible. Now, I missed it.
Taught your parents to have?
Yeah, they would have the least amount of contact with me as possible. at least matter of contact, right? Because I was disfellowshipped from the faith. And it was looked at to be, a discipline thing with the hope that you'll return. But with my situation, so much was missed.
Right.
So much was missed. And that's where I get kind of upset and feel exploited and manipulated and feel like, how could these men who know so much about the Bible and who are taught so much about Bible prophecy miss something so important?
Right.
When you're taught from infancy to go to these elders and go to these men, these are spiritually mature men, and they are there to help you and to grease your head and to get you on the right track. But so much of the questions that I was asked as a teenager was so much about the what and the where and the who. No one really examined enough. I'm not gonna say it was never maybe
why.
The why.
The why. There's always a
why. Why does she keep doing this? And then if you're gonna tell me to stay away from this boy, which I'm trying to do, you got to give me steps as to how. Now, how am I gonna do this when my name is being announced in front of the congregation? And within the city I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. And like I said, this is a worldwide faith that I belong to. But in Indianapolis alone, like, I'm sure there's more now, but there's about 32 different congregations. And the way it works is my dad was being an elder. He would go and visit other congregations. So we knew a lot. Our family was pretty known across the city. So when your name is announced, naturally, it doesn't just stay within these 200 people or so. It goes out, right? So that means that as a teenager, now I'm bad association.
Right.
Bad association spoils useful habits. And for a lot of parents, that's me. That girl is sexually active.
That was you. But then what about, did they ever address the guy?
The guy, he got what's called a slap on the hand. He was not baptized. I was. So because I was baptized in this faith, I was disfellowshipped. He couldn't be disfellowshipped because he never was baptized. Though he was raised within the same faith, just like I was, because he was not baptized, he was not disfellowshipped. So this is the part. This means, and this is an issue that I have even with my ex, is the fact that he will never understand the journey I went through because he didn't go through it. And even today, I'll get to that here in a minute, how it is today after he got baptized, we got married, kind of the reaction of things. But I've always felt like that man has never received the discipline that he was due.
Wow. And
that's a part of the problem, because to this day, he doesn't think he did anything wrong. Because he's been, we'll get to that, but he's pretty much been told we'll say directly and indirectly, that pretty much the things that he did to me was not all that bad by certain individuals. And I'll get to that too. But to kind of give that foundation, so for him, he was not baptized. I was. So this means that when I was disfellowshipped at 17, I was not allowed to go to my brother's graduation. I was not allowed to go to my cousin's wedding. Really? I think what I missed. I missed one wedding. I missed my brother's graduation. Different things I was not invited to because I'm disfellowshipped. Now, I will say that in 2008, the policies about disfellowshipping in minors changed, but I was already married with kids at that point. So that didn't help me. Right.
Oh, wow.
So that did not help me. Right. It's 2008. I got married in 2005. So, when I was disfellowshipped, that's the way it was. However, my ex, he was able to have a graduation party. He could talk to his mother and his sisters or whoever else. He didn't get the same punishment as me. And of course, I'm also carrying the child. Now, there were some individuals that personally did not want to deal with him because they knew the situation.
Right. Okay.
But he was not disfellowshipped. I was, which is another big issue because I was disfellowshipped, still messing with the same individual. I was disfellowshipped 3 years, 5 months, and 1 day. And that's a long time. That's a long time of me trying to break off this relationship with this individual. Now, here's where it gets kind of interesting. Let me go ahead and throw this in there about what the problem was and what I talked about before, understanding the why. See, I was sexually assaulted when I was 9. And there was a situation that happened when I was 5, but majorly when I was 9. And unfortunately, it happened over another sister's house from my congregation. So this meant it was a older boy. It's still very hard for me to talk about. So he was about 12, I was about 9. But what this meant was I was in the presence of my attacker for years. So that definitely had an effect on me.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I'm gonna throw this part in here and hopefully everybody can keep up. Fast forward to beefing with my husband, because I'm telling my husband we're married, we're having rocky times. We didn't stay in the same congregation. He went to one congregation growing up, I went to another. So we got married and went to one congregation, then moved to another. And I found myself in the same congregation as my attacker's mother. The attacker, ironically, I don't know if he's still in jail, but at that point he was in jail. For whatever his sins were, he was in jail. But I told my ex at that time, I can't go to this congregation. I can't worship here. I can't even make it through the door without having a panic attack because I'm around his family. And you're allowing our daughter to play with his grandson. First of all, the fact that he has a grandson says a lot. See, he's only 3 years older than me. And that doesn't bother you. And see, a husband protects his wife.
Protects his wife.
A husband protects his wife and he protects his family.
He covers his wife.
I'm sorry.
He covers his wife.
Yes. So the fact that you don't have a problem with this is causing more problems. You're telling me I need to be forgiven. I need to get over it. Now you're another person telling me just to get over it. And I'm telling you, I can't be in this environment. We have to go. And you're not concerned about my spirituality. You're not concerned about that. You're not concerned about my mental state. You're not concerned about my welfare. So that added more problems onto an already existing problem, which was domestic violence. So let me get into the domestic violence because time is getting away from me.
That's okay.
But,
do what you have to do.
Okay. But get into the domestic violence portion. Remember, he's the only person I've ever been with. Right. Since I was 15. Until I filed for divorce in 2016, and the divorce was nasty and messy and lasted on for a very, very long time, drawn out for years, just messy. But filed for divorce in 2016. So in 2016, December, it was over with. Okay. So when I was a teenager, I was 16 years old. Had already been disciplined once. Actually, at this point, I had already been disciplined twice. I'm getting myself confused, maybe 3 times. I have 4 committee cases before I got this fellowship. So at this point, I snuck out the house one day. I'm 16 years old and I'm telling him, I'm like, I can't keep doing this with you. I'm gonna get this fellowship. If I don't stop, I'm gonna get this fellowship. I said, you know what? At this being 16 years old, thinking the way a 16-year-old thinks, you think you're old, you think you're in love, you think you think you're gonna just be together or whatever. I asked him, and I call him Calvin, so I just kind of keep his identity secret. But I asked him, I said, can we just secretly date until I'm 18? Because he was already out of school. And then we can get married. And then I won't have to worry. And then can we just secretly date until I'm 18? But we just can't be intimate because I'm going to get this fellowship. And I don't want that to happen. And he accused me of cheating on him right there in that moment, because he's trying to figure, okay, why you don't want to give me your body. And his reaction was, well, if you love me, you would, or if you're not cheating on me, then you would. So right there in that moment, like I made the decision to give him my body as a way to prove to him that I have been faithful. And what did that amount to? I found myself at 17 pregnant in fellowship for my faith. Well, that went on 3 years, 5 months, and 1 day. It was a journey coming back to that faith. I had to work at it. Just like it took me 4 times getting this fellowship, it took me 4 tries to come back. In the book kind of talks about that, how I went back through it's called the judicial process, and was told, no, we don't think you've been out here long enough. No, try again. Which was very, very hard because this is what I'm talking about. I really don't think they did not understand, number one, domestic violence and what was happening to me. But I feel like for you to be a faith, as affluent as you are in so many things, it's no excuse. Because information is out there about domestic violence and certain things that should have been recognizable, I feel. Okay. So that's my extra trauma, is why didn't these men understand this? And even when I was telling them, at one point when I was 19 years old, he had kicked it. We had broke up or whatever. I had my daughter at this point, but I was 19 years old. And this is where I really felt like, oh, I got a big problem here. He kicked in the door and attacked me. He attacked me, on top of me, attacking me, mad at me. And our daughter is on the bed just watching. She's 1 at this point. So when I was told no, that I could not come back to the faith, I got discouraged. Who else is going to want me but him?
Right.
So that caused me to go back, and this cycle of abuse was really started. But one thing I will say is that when I was 19, I ended up being linked with a domestic women's counseling service. So domestic women's counseling. And unfortunately, that was a process that I went through 10 years on and off, trying to break it off with him. You know, after I finally broke it off at one point after I had my son, and, you know, was able to get back in the faith. So fine, great, good. You would think things are good. I broke it off with this guy. I'm a single mother of 2, but I'm trying to get myself together with God. I'm working hard to do that. And all of a sudden, well-meaning family members and friends are there to encourage me to go back to him, because now he decided that at this point, well, now I'm going to be of this faith too. I'm going to be serious. I'm going to get baptized, and that's what I'm going to do. And he made that known to people. So now my family members are telling me things like, I don't have a right to keep these kids away from their dad. You guys need to get married. I mean, literally, I even have family members yelling at me, just get married. And through this process, I'm telling them things like, so because even within the book, I talk about my father, you know, and my mother, you know, and other family members, my grandmother, encouraging me to allow this boy back in my life, or this man back in my life who was toxic. And the sad part about it is these are individuals who should have encouraged me to stay away from him, especially because I am the 3rd woman within my family tree to endure physical violence by her spouse within the same religious community. My aunt went through it, you know, and when I started to ask questions of my aunt as a young adult, it was kind of like the family didn't want her to talk to me about it. And that was information I need to know. That was before I got married. I was asking her about what happened between you and Uncle so-and-so, because I don't remember. You guys even being together, I don't remember.
Right.
She started telling me just a little bit, and then she kind of like cut off her communication with me about it. On the other side, my mother, her mother, so my grandmother, was physically abused by her husband. And unfortunately, that's how she died.
Wow. That's
how she died. Now, what he would do was hit her on top of the head all the time. And she ended up having a traumatic brain aneurysm from that repeated over hitting on top of her head. And then you ask yourself, why would a man always hit her on the top of the head? This is something I want people to realize so that people don't know. Right. Where's the bruises? That's what a lot of these men, especially within religious communities, do. They know exactly what
they know where to hit you.
Yes. They know where to hit you. They know where to hit you. They know what to do so that it's just enough so that people don't believe you.
Right. Oh yeah.
So, long story short, we ended up getting married. Now, before we got married, right? I knew that it was a bad decision because I had already been through domestic women's counseling, broken free, was doing well, and had not communicated with that counseling service for a while. Now I'm listening to people within the faith and my family members and thinking they must know right because I'm the one who messed up. I'm the one who got this fellowship. They must know better than me. They must know right. They must be telling me right because they never got in trouble. I'm the problem in the family. I'm the bad seed. And even after I got married, I took so much because I felt like it's what I deserved for being such a rotten kid. And that's not true. And it's sad to feel that way. But before we got married, long story short, I hope I'm not confusing everybody.
No, I'm following you.
Okay, good. I want to make sure. Before we got married, I made this man promise me. I said, we've been through a lot. And I don't want to go through what we've already been through. So you got to promise me that you're never going to put your hands on me. No cheating, because we were engaged to be married at one point. He cheated. And I didn't find out until like a year later. Right? We were engaged and you mean tell me you cheated on me and you just wasn't, well, when were you going to plan on telling me this? Because we was already engaged. So when were you going to tell me that you cheated? So it's just crazy. But So, and I had him, and I told him exactly kind of what I needed just to make it through this marriage and for us to be back together. And he promised me, you know, all those things, and I believed him. And we got married. And then 3 months after being married, he throws like a tub of food right at my head, bam, and it breaks against my head. And I remember shouting at him, "You promised me you weren't going to do this anymore, but you made me do it," was his response. And within the first 2 years of our marriage, that was the worst abuse that I've experienced in my life. It was so frequent. It was so constant. It was everything from, and the way he would do it, and this is how he even tries to make himself not accountable today. "I never beat you. I didn't beat you, though I have been struck before by him. I never beat you." This is the things that he would do. Push me so hard into a wall that there's a hole. Bite me. His whole thing was jumping on top of me and twisting, you know, your arms or this or that. Pick me up and then let me just drop free fall. Okay. All these different things, you know what I mean? Or if he's hitting me, or it's not in my face. So in his mind, I'm not beating you black and blue. And not to mention the fact that I'm a dark-skinned girl, so we don't bruise. Okay. Some of us don't bruise like other people do. And that's important to keep in mind too. In his mind, I didn't beat you black and blue. So long story short, after 2 years of marriage, I'm trying to close it out here within these next 15 minutes. Within my first 2 years of marriage, I had taken so much. I just could not take no more. I can't take it no more. I went and told the elders of our congregation. And this is where it gets good.
Okay.
They told me, okay, I need to be more of a submissive wife. The whole conversation was about my behavior and not disciplining him at all for what I'm telling you he's doing to me. It's like they were protecting him. And I went and spoke to those two elders twice. We did 2 rounds. So we talked about it. Time went on. Then I went back and said, nothing's changing. He's still doing these things. Time went on again. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk to another elder. I went to another set of elders. And I remember during this time, I happened to meet someone else, because in this time, I'm feeling so guilty. I figured I'm the only one in this faith, this beautiful faith that's going through domestic violence. I'm the only victim, and I'm being a victim because of my sin. So I really thought that I was like the only person. And I thought it was just so unheard of, only to find out that I was simply one of many. And here's the fact for everybody. Domestic violence affects, I got my topic, my statistics here.
Yes.
1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. 1 out of 3 women and 1 in 4 men. And this is the point. It does not matter what religion you belong to. It does not matter your age, your race, your social economic status. None of that matters when it comes to domestic violence. And that's something that is a big problem with the faith that I belong to, because these men were not treating this sin as seriously as it is. Especially when I went to the other round. I realized at that point, after I had talked to what's called an elder A and B. Now I'm talking to elder C and D, right? Because I'm feeling like A and B didn't do anything. Let me talk to C and D. Now, remember when I was a child going through judicial committees, it was a set of 3 and you had to be judged by that. But this was just considered being counseled. So there was only 2 elders that were there. The problem is, at this point, by the way, I finally met someone who I was surprised was a victim of violence herself. And unfortunately, she ended up having an affair on her husband, is how that kind of ended, which happens for, you know, women. And she's not the only person that I know with the faith that I used to belong to who that's what happened. These men are beating them so much that they end up in a relationship with somebody else, you know, and then they get this fellowship. Okay. And that's what happened to her. She ended up being separated from her husband because he was abusive. And unfortunately, she ended up getting this fellowship because, you know, she was still married. So,
right. Wow.
So but the main thing I took from her, I was shocked to even find out that she was even in an abusive situation. I've known her. She knew me. She knew me when I was a baby. And there's a big age difference there. I was actually the flower girl at her wedding. So, but when she told me this, I was so shocked But one thing she told me was, look, you have to go to white elders because Black elders don't treat their wives right. So that's what I'm thinking in my mind, that's the key. So elder C and D, one was white and one was Black. And it didn't make a difference at all. That was not, that in her mind.
In her mind, that's right? What it was.
It makes no difference. It makes no difference. At that point, I told elder C and D that I was pregnant. I was pregnant talking to them about the fact that my husband is abusing me and I am pregnant and he is dragging me down the steps and picking me up and jumping on top of me and throwing things at me. And my ex-husband would tell me things like, well, brother so-and-so said him and his wife used to throw things at each other. So he's starting to actually hear things from other leaders who are definitely were abusive spouses, and they're encouraging him, but giving him the wrong information. And he's learning even more now because nothing happened the first 2 times.
Nothing happened, right.
Now he's learning even more, like, my wife is a problem. She keeps on. And by the way, within the faith that I belong to, the way it works is if a wife comes to an elder and says, we're having a problem, we need to talk to you about it, they won't talk to you unless the husband gives permission, which is a big problem.
Are you serious?
That's the way it works. Which is a big problem when it comes to domestic violence, because so many of these women never get a chance to even speak. Because the husband will say, no, we don't want to talk to you. No, we're fine. Or my wife, we're fine.
Wow. And it's still like that today?
It's still like that today. It is still like that today. And that's my point with what I speak. It's dangerous. Even with, I'm going to detour again. Sorry, people, detouring. Within this present moment, I want to share. I didn't want to get all Bible, on you, because I know some people in our audience may not
I get it. Yeah.
agree with this version of the Bible, but I want to read this one scripture. Okay. So based off of the scripture here, this is the King James, 1 Corinthians 7:11. And it says, and if she depart, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. So although I'm no longer practicing that faith, I do still, hold the teachings dear, the way I learned from a child from the Bible. So what that means, although I am legally divorced from my husband, I'm still spiritually married to him. So this is the problem with that. When I filed for divorce, okay, I'm gonna wrap this up 10 more minutes ago or so. When I filed for divorce, I was punished for that because God hates a divorce. Though by the time I had filed for divorce, I had spoken to over 17 elders. That's wrong. 15 elders. When I moved to another congregation, I spoke to 3 others. But long story short, 15 elders. I'm messing up my numbers, guys. It's been a long day.
That's okay.
I'm gonna say over a dozen.
It's too many. It's too many.
Right. By the time it was all said and done, from the time I left my faith, it was 17. Let me correct myself. But by the time I had filed for divorce, it was about a dozen. And I was disciplined and lost what's called privileges. And because I have filed for divorce, you lose privileges because you're not a good example of a wife. But he doesn't lose any because he didn't file.
Wait, come on.
The abuse is so bad that I told one of the elders, I said, look, I'm going to pull this out. I don't cover it up. I went and got my medical records from the counseling service that I had been through 10 years on and off. And I said, look, you're going to tell me every time that I was going to this, I would be crazy if I'm making up all of this. I said, you can have it. This is proof of everything that I've been through in my marriage.
Oh.
And was basically told that that's just not really what we do. And there's too much liability for us to be involved. And
so they just wanted you to stay with your abuser. Period. That's your husband.
They would not say, now I can't say, they're not going to encourage you to, they're not going to say, we encourage you to stay with your abuser. They're not going to say that.
Well, that's what they're saying, basically.
Indirectly,
right.
What's being said, indirectly what's being taught. And that's the problem where I said it came a point where it's like, this is not even safe for me to do this anymore. Even the way that I live right now, right? If I wanted to go on a date with someone, I would be disfellowshipped because I'm still spiritually married to this man, and I'm going to be spiritually married to this man unless I prove that he's unfaithful. I'm not going to put myself through that mental anguish. My ex unknowingly annoyingly lives 5 minutes away from me. He moved 5 minutes away from me. Okay. I'm not gonna go over there and sit at his house for nothing because I know what he did to me during our marriage. And there was times when he did not come home, when he went to go see his ex-girlfriend. And although I told the spiritual men that that's what he did, and he was so ignorant to even put it on Facebook. So a lot of the people in the congregation knew because he put it on Facebook, his little whatever, hookup or whatever we'll call it, which I can't even say it was hookup because I can't prove it.
Right.
But I was at that point when that happened, I was so upset because it's like, okay, you're abusing me and you're going to have the nerve to go see an ex-girlfriend. I don't think so. I got bold and called her. It was like, look, you can have him. But I'm a part of a faith where if I don't prove that he's had an affair, I can't get a divorce. And she didn't want to cooperate. Her response was, this is before I had my daughter. So before I was pregnant, her response was, well, I don't want to break y'all up. It's like, no, something went on. He was over there at your house. You said that he was there. He said he never went in the house. You said he was in the house. What kind of fool do you take me for? Mm-hmm. So that also hurt so deeply because in reality, this man more than likely was unfaithful to me. I just couldn't prove it. And I stayed in this marriage longer than what I had to because I couldn't prove it. So even like I said, even today. But
you had to prove it to the church?
Yes. Yes. Or he has to say that he did it. If he never admits it. Oh right. So even though right now, right, I'm divorced, right? If I wanted to be spiritually divorced, I would have to prove that he's having an affair. I'm not about to put myself in that situation to where I am going, going over there. Here's a perfect example. And things that he does just to irritate me, we have to co-parent because we have children.
Right, right.
And things that he does to irritate me would be maybe I'll get a receipt from a hotel. You're trying to be funny because you're never going to admit that you're at that hotel with another woman. And that's probably more than likely what you're doing, but you made sure to give me the receipt. So things like that. And it's like, I walked away from that faith because I had to decide this is making me sick mentally going through this. Being a woman who is divorced within this faith and trying to maintain
your sanity,
my sanity,
period,
and my spiritual
and your everything. Because first of all, I can't. That's a lot for somebody to go through. Because not only were you being abused at home, but you were also being abused by your church.
It's spiritual, and it's spiritual abuse. Now they would never admit that. And this is the point. I'm gonna say this one last thing. I got about 5 minutes or so. Okay. But it is so reckless because this faith is known worldwide for knocking on doors, for having Bible studies, for handing out literature. But the way that it seems to be, first of all, within one of the main teaching books, it states that you can't get a divorce unless it's extreme physical abuse. My question was, what is that? What is extreme physical abuse? Because you can die trying to figure out what extreme physical abuse is.
Really, you can get what? When he kills me, is that?
What is extreme? And my ex's response has been, you never had a right to divorce me. I never put you in the hospital. And to the point where my oldest child would say that to me, you should never divorce my daddy. He never put you in the hospital. Now, isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? So when you have a responsibility to teach over 8 million people on the world, and you print reckless information, you're responsible for that. It's completely reckless. Not to only mention one more thing. In 2013, I was so happy because there was finally a magazine printed about women and about domestic violence. And I thought, because I didn't file for divorce until 2016, I thought my problems are solved. Mm-hmm. I read that information, and the way it was presented so unfairly and one-sided. It gave the experience of someone who was abusing his wife, literally to the point where he put a gun on his wife and then a knife on his son. And then they got to knock on the door and study the Bible. And then the abuse stopped. So that leads people to think that would happen in their situation. I'm happy for them. That's great.
Right.
But in the reality and in the United States of America,
like in the real world that we live in,
a woman, and I've been there, Child Protective Services told me in 2012, because of domestic violence that happened in front of my son, he saw it. Mind you, that I didn't even know that the child services what's it called, CPS?
Yeah.
I think it's called CPS in Indianapolis, Child Protective Services. They had already went to my children's school without my knowledge and got a statement that said what happened.
Right.
And I was told basically that if I didn't leave the house, that I would lose custody of my kids.
Yeah.
And I left and found myself moved back in 3 months later. You know, so I've definitely been through a roller coaster ride. And the crazy thing about that situation in 2012, when we told the elders, we'll call them elder A, B, C, D, where were you at that? E, F, G, something like that. G, H, something like that.
Goodness.
The elders then told us, there's nothing we can do about it. Child Protective Services is involved. There's written documentation. My son said what he saw.
Wow.
And you can't do anything about the situation. So, you know, I'm learning just how much I'm valued, you know, here, especially for my father to even know about the situation. And
well, you weren't valued. You weren't valued.
You know, it's been a very tough journey. One other thing I wanted to mention before I close was the fact that with everything that I've been through, like I said, I've had people who have been of support and I appreciate it. It's been a very, very tough journey, but I did have to make a decision. I'm not going to worship this way anymore because it's no longer safe for me to even do it. This is no longer safe. I'm going through this and this is just not a safe place for me to be anymore. And the information that's being taught is almost like other information. And I'm still researching it and doing different things because I'm curious to see how things are changing over time. It's always presented as if the husband who's abusing the wife in some situations just isn't a believer. He's not a believer. That's why they're going through that. No. And even like I said, with the information, that's one of the main study books, when it says you can't divorce unless it's extreme physical abuse, it does say the elders are supposed to investigate the charges. I've never had a true investigation, which is what I thought was going to happen when I said, hey, look, here you go.
My goodness.
So I will definitely close on saying that, you know, I've been through a lot. And even now let me say this. I cannot say that no elders ever came by our house and gave us anything positive, because that happened. There were individuals who did help as far as encouragement is concerned. But when you come by, you just have one conversation, that's it. That's not enough. Not with domestic violence. And when you go back and ask the husband, are things getting better? And not the wife, that's a problem. And if you do ask, and the wife says yes, that means things are good in this moment. That doesn't mean things are solved. So that's definitely another aspect that was a problem. And another thing is just men who lead, who are more about the show and not about helping, because too many times there are individuals who made it a point to make a scene, because people knew there was rumors, right? Rumors in the congregation at a certain point about there being problems in my marriage. So what individuals would do is want to talk loud. How you doing? Everything going right with you and your husband? I'll get ready to go over here and talk to sister so-and-so and check on her. Now, when you do that,
that's just for show. And what they should have done, because they were men, what they should have done is dealt with him as men on men.
Thank you.
You don't put your hands on a woman. You don't listen. Your wife should have only had to report that once.
Exactly.
Once. So, and they should have handled it. Period. Exactly.
And the question is, why am I here? You know, how did I, sometimes I ask myself, how did I end up here? Because I love the faith that I grew up in. I loved it. Even though I sinned, it was this fellowship, it was something that I wanted to do, and something that I wanted to be a part of, but it came to a point where I'm like, this is not safe.
No.
And I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. And it's okay, because God's going to judge me. And it's okay. So he can have that. He can have that. They keep telling him that he's such a fine brother and everything like that. You know, he's frustrated right now because he wants me to get a boyfriend and commit adultery so he can go ahead and remarry. So that's frustrating too, because it's like and you would think, what kind of women, that's another thing I asked myself, what kind of women was I actually serving this faith next to, when all you want is for me to mess up so you can marry my ex, or, you know, get with, marry, whatever.
That's crazy.
Ex.
That's crazy.
That's what people are hoping for.
That's crazy.
And literally is she disfellowship yet? How unfair. What? So I said, I'm walking away from this. This is enough. This is enough.
Well, I can tell you right now, I come from a different denomination. And now that I think about it, I'm no longer with that denomination either. But first of all, I'm not really into denominations. I consider myself a follower of Christ. But I can tell you this, my abuser, because I got married when we were young. We were probably barely 19. And we both grew up in the church, the same church. Families were close. I mean, like, we grew up together. I would have never thought that would have turned into abuse. And it did. And I was shocked because I'm thinking, I don't even understand what's happening right now. Like, I don't even understand what's going on. And my father-in-law was the pastor, but when I did tell him what was going on, he handled it.
That's good.
He handled it. He helped me move.
That's
good. Like, daughter, when you're ready. Because, I always tell people we're not always ready because we're still trying to figure things out.
Right. And you still love them too. You love them. You hope you don't change.
The child, it's like a lot. You got I love all this stuff is going on. And he said, when you're ready, let me know. And he helped me come and pack. Now, so I can't put it on him. I put it on myself. The delay came from me. But I don't even care what church. That's crazy because that is not God. That's not of God. God does not want his daughters beaten and battered. Well, he doesn't want his sons beaten and battered because we do know men get abused too. That's a whole nother story. But I'm just saying from the very beginning, the very first time you brought that to their attention, they should have dealt with him.
Exactly.
But also, they should have had a woman there. Why are you talking to three men all the time? Where the women?
And sometimes that's the way it is. And that's one thing that really hurts me is the fact that, they never caught that I was sexually assaulted. And maybe if they would have taught me from that angle, things would have got better.
It would have gotten better.
Yeah. And it was very hard talking to them and feeling like, and then girl, I can go on and on about it, but it was very difficult talking to them because I really felt like they didn't understand me. Long story short.
I think I wouldn't. I think if I was in that same predicament, I don't think I would have been able to talk to them. Being a young woman and you being grown men. And then men who think they know you. We know your daddy. And even in times in those meetings, them telling me that ain't happened. And I'm like, how could you tell me? You want me to speak to you honestly, and you're telling me that something I've said didn't happen or that's not happening in the household? And already that's another problem too, when people already think they know you. Right.
And they want to get, you can't come from that angle, from that.
You're on the outside looking in.
Right. And here's another example of that really quickly. I know my time is up and I have to go, but here's an example of that. At one point in those early years, I told them, I don't feel like I'm pretty. Aww. And I told them because I always heard you're pretty for a dark skinned girl. So I didn't think I was really all that cute. And one of them said, well, I don't know why. My wife is dark skinned. I think she's the most beautiful thing in the world. And that's the point. That's the way. And even as a child, I remember thinking, so what? And as an adult, I look back at that. I'm like, that's the way you feel about your wife.
Your wife. I'm talking about myself. You how
I feel about myself inside.
And that's so you were telling people, you were crying out. I just hear so many times you were crying out and nobody heard you. Nobody heard you. And when you just said what you just said, I have a granddaughter who is my heart. She's 15. And she actually said something similar to me last year. She was like, and she's beautiful. I'm like, and I'm not just saying that because she's my granddaughter. She's beautiful. And I said to her, are you kidding me? Like, where are you getting this? She said she doesn't think she's pretty. I'm like, where are you getting this? You are so beautiful, but not even just on the outside. You're beautiful inside out. So I spent a lot of time pouring into her. Because, and the point that I'm trying to make is, as a young woman, you automatically got a lot of self-esteem issues, period.
Yeah, you do.
Like automatically. So, well, that was her calling me. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay.
I thought I put the phone on. Sorry, I talked about. As a young woman, you're already going through so much. It's just growing up and trying to figure things out, and to have people not hear your voice, to have people traumatize you, and then you're saying, well, this happened, and you go and then to be punished again from the church like that, where that is supposed to be your safety place.
Very difficult. I'm gonna say one last thing, I'm gonna close out. And then the other thing too that's very difficult about it, because although men are the head of the congregation, women have a valuable role too. So my situation, I really feel like should have been handled differently, but that's in the past. But the one thing that's always disturbed me too is the fact that, when I was having premarital sex, every elder had to be made aware of it. That was a rule. So if there was 12 men on the body, although the judicial committee only was 3 men, everybody on that body knew. Now, when it comes to domestic violence, that didn't happen. When I spoke to Elder C and D, I said, don't you already know about this? Because don't they have to tell the whole body about domestic violence? And they don't. And I'm like, and why is that? Why don't you let that serious enough? You let all those men know in that congregation that this is what's going on. Right. It's just considered to be confidential against those between the 2 elders that you talked to at that time. And that's a big problem. So already you don't think it's, you're saying one thing and showing a completely different thing. But I know I've talked enough, Carolyn.
No, that's okay. So what advice would you give someone who, I call it church hurt. I've been through church hurt too, but a lot of people go through that. What advice would you give someone who maybe find themselves in a predicament like that, where they're trying to reach out to their members of their church or whomever, but nobody's hearing them. Nobody's hearing them. They're just, sweeping it under the rug. Right.
I would say this: work really, really hard not to lose your faith in God, because I've been there. Okay. Yeah. Even sometimes you can be so emotionally distraught that your emotions are telling you one thing, but your mind still knows the word and the way you should be. Yes. Do not let what people put you through push you away from God, and do not let what people think of you mold you into something else, because what people think of me, they want to see me out here with another man, another baby, and all this other mess. No, I'm not that. Right. You're going to see me live a class. You're going to see me walk a class. Right. It's unfair. But you're going to see me walk a classy walk. I'm not going to give you what you think I need, what you think I am. So that'd be my advice for someone, because when it comes to religion, hurt like that, your salvation is being jiggled in front of your face. Hurt like that is like an undescribable hurt. It hurts deep, and it takes time to get over with, but the way you need to live. Don't let anybody take you away from that. If you don't worship anywhere, still read your Bible.
Read your Bible and then have your own personal relationship with God. And so that's where relationship comes in there. When you have a relationship with God, whatever their beliefs are, whatever they're going through, whatever their issues are, because what I've learned is man is so flawed.
Man is very flawed.
That's
so true.
God is flawless. So I appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm telling you, so you said that your books are on Amazon, can be found on Amazon?
Yes, on Amazon.com. Just Google me. I'm on all social media. Mira Cassidy, MiraCassidy, and yet my books are on Amazon.
Thank you, Mira. Well, I appreciate you sharing. This was your story is so powerful, but believe it or not, even though while you were going through it, you thought you were the only one, there are so many people going through the same.
It sure is. It's so many people. And even in the faith that I used to practice, and that's the sad part, learning that there's one, I was just one of many. It's sad. It's one of many. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much.
So thank you. Have a good evening. Have a good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us.